Sometimes the most important discoveries aren't buried deep underground or lost at sea. They're hidden right in plain sight behind locked doors, sealed vaults, and forgotten rooms. Today, we're counting down 10 real things that were found locked away for decades. And we're starting with the most shocking find first. When authorities forced open the door to a small apartment in North London in January 2006, they expected to find an empty unit. Instead, they found the remains of a woman named Joyce Carol Vincent. She'd been dead since December of 2003. For nearly 3 years, the apartment had remained locked and completely undisturbed. What made this discovery so disturbing wasn't just the time gap. It was the fact that nothing appeared wrong from the outside. Joyce's rent was paid automatically through housing benefits. Her utilities were still active. Junk mail piled up behind the door. Inside the apartment, Christmas presents were still wrapped and placed neatly on the floor. The television was on when she died and had continued playing static for years. Joyce wasn't a recluse. She had friends, she had coworkers, she had a life that abruptly stopped while the world outside her locked door just kept moving. Next, we go back to 1947. A Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat near the Dead Sea, threw a stone into a cave and heard pottery shattering. Inside, he found large clay jars sealed with lids, and in them were ancient scrolls wrapped in linen. These would become known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. The scrolls contain some of the oldest known copies of Hebrew biblical texts. Scholars believe they were sealed inside the caves by a Jewish sect during the Roman invasion of Judea. The caves remained sealed for nearly 2,000 years, protected by the dry desert climate. When researchers finally studied the scrolls, they discovered something shocking. Many biblical passages were nearly identical to modern versions, challenging claims that religious texts had been heavily altered over centuries. But here's the twist. The scrolls themselves were locked away again after their discovery. For decades, access was restricted, with some scholars denied permission to even study them. From ancient caves, we move to the heart of the Vatican. Found in 1612, the Vatican Apostolic Archive was designed to store the internal records of the Catholic Church. For centuries, it was completely closed to the public and even to most scholars. The secrecy fueled endless speculation about what might be hidden inside. In 1881, Pope Leo XIII allowed limited academic access, but the process was tightly controlled. Over time, historians gained access to trial records, letters, and correspondence that revealed how deeply the Church was involved in political and social affairs. Among the most controversial releases were documents related to the trial of Galileo and records from the Inquisition. In 2020, the Vatican opened archives related to Pope Pius XII during World War II. These files included letters from Jewish families pleading for help. The archives didn't contain supernatural secrets, but something more powerful, a paper trail of decisions that shaped history, all while hidden from public view for centuries. Now imagine this. In 2010, auctioneers entered a Paris apartment locked and untouched since 1940. The owner, Madame de Florian, had fled the city during the war and never returned. Instead, she continued paying rent for 70 years without ever opening the door again. When the apartment was finally unlocked, it was found exactly as she had left it. Furniture covered in dust, perfume bottles still on the vanity, toys scattered on the floor. And inside was a previously unknown portrait by the Italian painter Giovanni Boldini, depicting Madame de Florian's grandmother. The painting was later valued at millions of dollars. The apartment wasn't abandoned by accident. It was sealed deliberately at the moment war arrived, and it remained locked because fear and displacement froze an entire life in place. Next up is a treasure so magnificent it's almost mythical, the Amber Room. This was a lavish chamber constructed in the early 18th century using amber panels, gold leaf, and mirrors. Originally built in Prussia, it was gifted to Russia. During World War II, German forces dismantled the room and transported it to a castle. As Allied forces advanced in 1944, the Amber Room disappeared. Some believe it was destroyed in bombing raids. Others think it was sealed inside a bunker or a hidden chamber. Documents show crates were prepared and moved under guard. Witnesses reported tunnels being sealed. Despite decades of searches across Germany, Poland, and Russia, the original Amber Room has never been recovered. A replica now stands in its place, but the original remains missing, a masterpiece sealed away by war, still waiting behind a locked door somewhere. During the Cold War, U.S. intelligence agencies classified millions of documents related to covert operations and surveillance programs. These records were stored in secure facilities, often called the Black Vault. For decades, they remained inaccessible. Beginning in the 70s, journalists used the Freedom of Information Act to force the release of thousands of pages. Among them were documents on Project MKUltra, which involved non-consensual human experimentation. Files also revealed details about U-2 spy planes and surveillance of American citizens. Some records were found to have been deliberately destroyed. Others were heavily redacted. The vaults didn't hide fictional conspiracies. They held documented evidence of real actions taken in secrecy. When the locks finally opened, public trust was permanently altered. On December 6, 1907, an explosion ripped through the Monongah coal mine in West Virginia, killing at least 362 miners. It remains the deadliest mining disaster in American history. In the aftermath, rescue efforts were chaotic. Portions of the mine were sealed permanently due to instability and gas buildup. Entire tunnels were closed off and never reopened. Decades later, during safety inspections, some sealed areas were briefly accessed. Inside, investigators found miners' personal belongings exactly where they'd been left: lunch pails, boots, tools, and handwritten markings on the walls. These sections had been locked away underground for generations, turning the sealed tunnels into unintentional memorials. For decades, government agencies maintained sealed prosecutorial archives. In the United Kingdom, the creation of the Criminal Cases Review Commission in the 90s led to the reopening of files that had been locked away for years. These records revealed suppressed evidence, flawed forensic practices, and coerced confessions. In the United States, similar discoveries occurred when prosecutors were forced to release internal documents. In Illinois, a review of death row cases uncovered systemic failures that led to wrongful convictions. In many cases, proof of innocence had existed for years, but remained sealed inside filing cabinets. When the archives were finally opened, long-standing convictions collapsed. The truth had been locked away, not by accident, but by choice. The Ministry for State Security of East Germany, known as the Stasi, maintained one of the most extensive surveillance systems in history. Millions of files documented the monitoring of ordinary citizens. Neighbors, co-workers, even family members were recruited as informants. These records were locked away until the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. When citizens stormed Stasi offices, they discovered rooms filled with paper files, shredded documents, and audio recordings. The archives were later opened to the public, allowing people to request their own files. Many learned for the first time who had been reporting on them for years. What a trip that must have been! The documents revealed a society quietly watched from within. Finally, we come to a place that's locked but known to the world. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, was buried in 210 BC in a massive underground complex. Surrounding his tomb are thousands of life-size terracotta soldiers discovered in 1974, but the central burial chamber itself has never been opened. Ancient texts describe rivers of mercury flowing through the tomb and elaborate traps designed to protect it. Scientific surveys have confirmed unusually high mercury levels in the soil. Archaeologists have deliberately chosen not to open the tomb, citing preservation concerns and the risk of destroying whatever lies inside. So, for over 2,000 years, the burial chamber has remained sealed. It's one of the largest unopened tombs in human history, holding secrets we may never know.